Hello everybody, this is Graeme Anderson from Four Corners of the Board, and today I'm going to be looking at homebrewers. Now many years ago I tried my hand at brewing beer at home, and well, let's just say that when I want a beer now, I go and purchase mine. It did not go according to plan. And this game is all about being a home brewer and trying to make the best beers possible and appease the judges at the end of the game. You'll be rolling and trading dice to determine what actions you can take, then make sure your equipment is clean and you have the resources and maybe some flavor additions, then you brew a batch of beer. So, is Homebrewers a good game, or is it more like my own homebrew? Let's get to the table, see how it's played, then we'll come back for my final thoughts on Homebrewers. Here's the game set up for 3 players. You'll randomly draw 4 judging categories, which will be the evaluation categories at the end of the game. Next, there will be 8 randomly drawn quality track tiles placed on the appropriate area of the board. Next, draw and place down event tiles across all the months except for June and October, which are the Summerfest and the Oktoberfest, which are always the judging months. Shuffle up the flavor cards and draw the first 4 cards face up. Place the grain or trub tokens along with money to one side. Each player will pick a player color and place 4 of their markers at the start of each type of the beer's quality tracks, then place their scoring tracker on the start space. The first player gets the first player token, and each player receives a garage and a standard sanitization tile along with 3 dice, $2, 2 trub tokens which are placed on the leftmost sanitation spots in the garage, and 2 flavor cards drawn from the face down deck and placed face up in front of them. Then in turn order, each player gains 1 grain token and places on a brew recipe of their choice, and the game is ready to start. The game is split up to 8 months, and each month has 2 phases. The trade phase, where people will roll their dice and have the option to trade their dice with other players, and once everybody has locked in their dice, then starting with the start player, each player will action their dice in the second phase. During the trade phase, you'll reveal that month's events, and events are only available during the current month. Next, each player will roll their 3 dice once. Players can now trade dice. It is a 1-for-1 trade only, and you can only trade dice. When you're happy with your dice, you lock them on your player board. But if no player wants to trade with you, you still have 2 options. You can pay $1 to change one of your dice to anything you want, and the other option is if, at any time, you have 3 of the same side showing, you can re-roll all of your dice. And once everybody has locked in their dice, we move on to the action phase. While taking your turn, you will take the actions on the dice you want in any order. And during this phase, you can still pay $1 to change a die to any action phase that you want. You can also forego taking the action of one of your dice and receive $2 instead. And during your action phase, you can also pay $3 once a month to take a 4th action. So let's have a look at the actions. The Sanitize Your Equipment action allows you to remove the rightmost trub token from your sanitization track. Now this track is important because if it's completely filled with your trub tokens, you will not be able to brew any beer. Also, the cleaner your equipment is, the more points you'll get when you brew beer. The This Month's Event action, you can either take the top action of the event for free, or pay $2 to take the bottom action, and all these actions are just the standard die actions. The Gain Grain action allows you to take a grain token and immediately place it on one of your recipes. Each grain token represents all the ingredients you need to brew one batch of a particular beer. You're allowed to have more than 1 grain token on each recipe, but once they are placed, they cannot be moved. The flavor card action gives you 2 options. You can either take a flavor card by taking one of the face up or face down card, and the other option is to play a flavor card from your hand. And when you play a flavor card, you can either do the action at the bottom of the card and discard the card, or add the flavor card to one of your recipes to enhance its flavor. You can have multiple flavor cards on one recipe, but once played, it cannot be moved. And when you brew that type of beer, you will receive the benefits from the flavor card. The brew beer action will be the action you'll be wanting to do as many times as possible to score points and make your beers better. You'll decide which recipe you want to brew and remove one of the grain tokens from it, and you'll need to have at least 1 space free on your sanitation track. You'll move your player token on the chosen recipe's track the number of spaces as the number of bars in the rightmost uncovered space on your sanitation track. If you cannot move your player piece up on the recipe track, you cannot brew that recipe anymore. Next, you'll flip over the grain token you used to brew the recipe and place it in the rightmost empty space of your sanitation track. Next, you'll get the benefits from any flavor cards under the brewed recipe, and if there are multiple cards, you can do them in any order. Finally, if your player piece passed or landed on any benefits on the main board, you'll get those benefits now. So, when each player's actioned all their dice, the month ends and you move on to the next month. At the end of June is Summerfest, where you compare the qualities of each of your beers. For each type of beer, ale, porter, stout, and IPA, you'll see which player has the highest quality marker, and they will receive the maximum points. Second place, the next amount of points, etc. If you've not brewed any of that particular recipe, that is, your player marker is still in the start space, you cannot receive any points for that recipe. At the end of the game, you will also award these medals again, but they're going to be worth more points, and you're going to be trying for the 5 judging categories. All players that satisfy a particular judge will receive the points from that judge. A player can also receive multiple points from the same judge if they can satisfy the requirement multiple times and the judge allows you to claim it multiple times. Each flavor card under a recipe can also be used multiple times to satisfy different judges. Once you've received all your points for the final medals and the final judging, the player with the most points is the winner. Now let's return to see what I thought about Homebrewers. So, what did I think about Homebrewers? Let's first have a look at theme and components. Now, I felt the theme of the game worked really well. All the actions and results were beer related. Things like getting your equipment dirty after brewing or adding flavors to your beer to hopefully enhance its flavor and its reputation worked very well. The dice rolling piece, maybe not as much, but I felt the actions and the components were thematic. So let's go on to the components, and I have no complaints about the components. The custom dice are nice, well done, easy to read. There's no problem figuring out what's what. The board is well laid out and easy enough to read, and the flavor cards, they're small and decent, but they are easy to understand, and for the most part, you know, if you have any questions about the symbology in these cards or the judging categories, it's all outlined in the rulebook very nicely. Now, one thing about the components which I really did appreciate is that each person's little player pieces are a different beer mug. You know, it's just a very minor thing, and yes, the colors are different as well, but just having the little different sculpts for each player, I found interesting. Let's go on to the gameplay. And before I get into this part, I did want to mention that the walkthrough was for the basic game, where each person is the same. In the more advanced, and I would say more interesting, each player takes on a particular person. You have a kind of a special feature or special ability which is on the card, and your sanitation track is slightly different. And I also do that appreciate that at the back of the rulebook, it goes through each character and tells you what you can do and how to play that character, which was a nice touch. And you know what? For the gameplay, it was an enjoyable little game. The dice rolling for actions was probably my least favorite part of the gameplay though. During the first round or so, you really need to be trading. But if someone gets exactly what they need, there's no point in trading. They're just going to lock their dice. And it seemed in most of my 4-player games, there always seemed to be 1 or 2 people in a round that really didn't need to trade, which means the possibility for trading is kind of limited. So I really did like the fact that 3 of a kind was a free reroll. And paying $1 to change any face is a lifesaver. But that I found also negated the trading aspect. Now during the middle rounds, several players were making or had enough money to just buy the dice they didn't roll. They didn't want to trade, and they didn't need to trade as it meant helping someone else around the table. If I can have you not have an optimal round by me just paying $1 to change one of my dice, I'll always do that. I don't want to help you, I want to help myself. And if I can do that for $1, that's the route I'm going to be going for. But that being said, I never felt cut out from what I wanted to do. Yes, I might not get the optimal dice this round, but I can prep for the next. And getting rid of trub tokens or gaining grain is always a good option. Doing the monthly event might also be a way around not getting the action on a die that you got. But my favorite part of the game is the flavor cards. Yes, they are good to play for the one-time actions at the bottom, again allowing you to mitigate some of your dice rolls, but you know, adding them to a beer and having a milk, almond, cranberry IPA, I don't know, there's just something about that, and people were always announcing what beers they were creating. And the card play itself was interesting, because one of the things I liked most about the game is that when your quality marker can't be moved anymore, you can't brew that beer anymore. Now often in games of this that I've played, someone puts a bunch of flavor tokens, flavor cards on one of the recipes, and when they brew it, they get money, the marker goes up really high on the quality track, and they have a great turn. But since you can't move those cards once they're played, you may end up with an awesome set of cards you can't use later on in the game. I also found that the game seems well balanced in that effect. That is, there doesn't seem to be one overpowered strategy. During my games, the player who was slow and steady and had all of her beers at a decent quality could just as easy as win as the person who focused on making sure they were getting, top in 1 or 2 of the categories while foregoing another one or some of the end of game judging. Now, the end of the game judging is something that everyone needs to be planning for right from the start, as that usually gets you the majority of points. so getting the right flavor cards under the right recipes may not make the recipe as powerful during the game, but can be beneficial at the end. But then again, if you can get more points during the Summerfest and Oktoberfest before the final judging, maybe you don't need to worry much about the end of game scoring. So, I would say the most important part of the end of game scoring though is the one that's actually pre-printed on the board that you always get to do during the game. And that is, you get two times the points for the lowest quality beer you have. So if you have any beers at 0, you get 0 points for that one judge. So if you can get all your beers around 5 or 6, maybe you not win any categories, but you can get a lot of points for that last judge during the end of the game. Like I said, although not an overly complex or deep or long game, it definitely gives you some options in how do you want to play and approach your strategies. And it doesn't about an hour for 4 players? You know what? That makes Homebrewers a game I would recommend. It's a good weight to not cause anyone I played with analysis paralysis, and there are many ways to mitigate your turn if you do not get the exact die roll you wanted. All in all, an enjoyable game. But that's it for the moment. Until next time, thanks for watching.
Thanks so much for watching another Dice Tower video. If you enjoy our videos, subscribe to the channel for more fun, comprehensive board game coverage. Also, consider joining us at one of our events. Come to Dice Tower Retreat, a small, intimate gathering where gaming is king. Join us for Dice Tower Cruise, the largest board game cruise. Attend Dice Tower West in Las Vegas for gaming fun on the West Coast, or Dice Tower East in Orlando in sunny Florida. Dice Tower Conventions, the friendliest gaming conventions on Earth. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.